much you spending on the money for. On those dusty old records with the second-hand store. Said that's alright, mama, don't criticize. I've come home with a real good rhymes. Now all the people right behind, listening to the sunset, what fine. Say it's worth maybe 15 grand. To put the best dress on, take my hand, turn out the light. There's gonna be good rockin' tonight. The buzz like listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. Smoke in the seats alive. Listen to the sunset, 45. Well, me and the devil went for a spin. Another came up, I would've been cashing in. Because Terry used to feeling rotten. Book your clock, my ship's coming. It's finally arrived. We're listening to the sunset, 45. Things are looking up, the future's looking fine. It won't matter if the sun won't shine. Because I can go to a bluegrass too. Duck and move, and then I back for a scenic drive. Listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. We'll be smoking six alive. Listen to the sunset, 45. Whoa. The stars were shining bright. They whispered from on high, you let us say goodbye. Oh, the moon up, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone, say goodbye. Well, days turn to weeks, time would tell. Some things in life are too good to sell. Over and over, on and on. They hit the milk cow whoop all night long. They're too much to carry them, just ain't fine. Listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. Listen to the sunset, 45. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming out this afternoon. This is Lee, and I'm John. We sometimes call ourselves Sultana. Thank you to Jonathan Bourne Public Library for hosting this show. And in this show, we have a special guest who's going to be joining us in a few songs, our good friend Dan Tanner. That first song we started with refers to the collectible singles put out by Elvis on Sun Records before he was signed to RCA in 1955. Elvis was a veteran. In this show, we're going to look at the history of American veterans and some related popular music history through songs. I'm not a veteran. I write and perform shows that combine music and history. Some years ago, I received a request from someone at a show to do a show on the topic of veterans in America. It's an important subject and one that deserves to be treated with respect. I hope I've done it justice. So, as I mentioned, Elvis was a veteran. He was drafted at the end of 1957. He served in the military from 1958 to 1960. He served in Germany in a tank battalion. Elvis was given the option to serve as an entertainer to boost troop morale. But his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, insisted that he serve as a regular soldier in the interest of publicity. Colonel Parker himself had never served. He was given the honorary rank of colonel by Louisiana Governor Jimmy Davis, the writer of You Are My Sunshine. The Revolutionary War produced this country's first veterans, and it's associated with one of this country's earliest popular songs. Yankee Doodle is thought to have its roots as a Dutch harvest song. The song, as we know it, evolved out of an earlier song that was sung by the British during the French and Indian War to ridicule their colonial allies. The earliest printed copy of Yankee Doodle is dated from 1775 or 76 and attributed to an Edward Bangs, and it appears on a broadside. Broadsides were the most common medium for popular songs in those days. The Battle of Lexington of April 19, 1775 was the opening engagement of the Revolutionary War. According to legend, after their victory in the Battle of Lexington, as the British soldiers were marching towards Concord, their fife and drum played Yankee Doodle to mock the colonial militiamen they had just defeated. Also according to legend, after the Battle of Concord later that morning, as the British were making their hasty retreat towards Boston under colonial fire, the colonial militiamen then sang Yankee Doodle to taunt the British. In history, a lot can change in a few minutes, right? This song is from the perspective of a British soldier after the Battle of Lexington and before the Battle of Concord. It's 19th day of April, 5:30 in the morning. We met a rebel mob that of our coming had been warned. They had gathered in the pale first light of the rising sun, and they tried to face us down upon at Lexington. They numbered around 40. We were numbered many more. We were fit and polished as the uniforms we wore. They were raw, they were restless. Someone fired a gun. At Lexington, when the smoke had cleared away, that blood alone was shed. Nothing do they have to show for the wounded and the dead. Surely there's a father somewhere who will mourn the son. Lexington. So now we walk the main road along the fields and farms, and in the town of Concord we'll secure their strong arms. Then we'll return to Boston and our work will be done, and they'll lay to rest those fallen on the green at Lexington. The veterans of the Continental Army played an important role in forming this country, and not just from their having been victorious in the Revolutionary War. Before the Revolution, Minutemen and militiamen identified themselves by the colony that they were from. In putting together a national army, Washington envisioned and helped create an American identity that took precedent over the regional distinctions. Disabled veterans of the Revolutionary War were awarded a pension. Other veterans were given promissory notes. But oftentimes the government was unable to make good on those promissory notes, and promises of land were often unkept. It wasn't until 1818 that the first congressional act granting a pension to veterans was passed. And it wasn't until 1832 that a pension was finally granted to all surviving Revolutionary War veterans. Most of the victims of the worst maritime disaster in American history were Civil War veterans. By April of 1865, by April of 1865, the Confederate armies were all but defeated, and Union soldiers were scattered throughout the South. An order had been handed down that those soldiers from the states of Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky should make their way to the Mississippi River to await transport north. And thousands of veterans, many of them recently released prisoners from the Andersonville and Cahaba POW camps, had gathered in cities along the river. The Army put out an offer of $5 per enlisted man and $10 per officer to any steamship that would take the men up the river. Anxious to secure the contract for his ship, Captain J.C. Mason, himself a part owner of the steamship Sultana, insisted that a repair job on a leaking boiler be rushed, and agreed to cram as many as 2,300 men onto his ship, a ship that had a legal carrying capacity of 376 passengers. We're honored on this song to be joined by our friend Dan Tanner. He's an excellent harmonica player and a good entertainer, and a good friend. And we always look forward to doing shows down here in the Cape.
Veteran too.
A
veteran too.
And you're a veteran too. It makes us even doubly honored.
Yeah,
2, 3. Up the Mississippi River, run down Waterman. The Sultana started to roll, and the water was filled with sea. The river current was running strong and the water was high. From the mountain snows and wind in the spring of '65. Now the war was not on hold, and the wounds still fresh in mind. The riverbeds were full with the cakes left behind. So the army put out the word that there was money to be made. For every Union soldier taking home $5 would be paid. Take those beauty veterans home. All them kegs of sugar and took their bags of rolls. Up the Mississippi River, take those weary prisoners home. Captain J.C. Mason stood upon the bar. He said the ship can haul more cargo than the laws allow. Since there's money to be made for every soldier that can haul, no other steamships run this road. We're gonna take them all. The Sultana docked in Vicksburg, where a bullet swayed. The repairman set the fix it right, take the bottle. But Captain Mason said, you've got one day to get it. There's extra money to be made on this river road. And oh, Sultana, rolling up the river, rolling up the river, take those prisoners home. All them kegs of sugar and tote their bags of bones. Up the Mississippi River, take those weary veterans home. men on and gray, whistled from the war. Just a few hard days on the river, and they moved you back to their families and loved ones. They've been gone from for so long. Take it down. Soaring up as Memphis, the Sultana rolled with 6 times as many passengers. She was built to hold. Then at 3 a.m. there came a blast that split the night, and a gale storm of red hot coals filled the sky with light. 1,500 men were drowned or slaughtered by the steam, carried off to a boat, the ones of which they dreamed. See how greed can turn a man like a gambler turns his tricks, or even make the mighty Mississippi the river Styx. And the Sultana run up the river, run up the river, take those booty batteries home. On the Kansas and put them back up the Mississippi River, take those weary prisoners home. Up the Mississippi River, take those weary veterans home. Thank you. The veterans who were the victims of the Sultana disaster were never properly acknowledged or memorialized. At the time, the disaster was relegated to the back pages of newspapers because the headlines were dominated by the recent capture of John Wilkes Booth. And to this day, there remains no federal memorial to the veterans who were on that ship. In 1866, the Grand Army of the Republic was formed. It was an organization of Civil War veterans that lobbied for veterans' rights and benefits. And under the leadership of General John Logan, it was behind the first official Memorial Day on May 30th, 1868. The Grand Army also lobbied for voting rights for black veterans who had served in the United States Colored Troops regiments. After the Civil War, the first peacetime black regiments were formed. They became known as the Buffalo Soldiers. They served in the wars with the Plains Indians and later in the Spanish-American War. But by the turn of the century, 1900, Jim Crow laws had taken effect in the South, and a Jim Crow attitude prevailed in much of the country. Under President Wilson, black Americans were no longer allowed to serve in combat positions, and they were kept in supporting roles only. A notable exception to this was the Harlem Hellfighters. Originally the 15th Regiment of the New York National Guard, the Hellfighters were allowed to travel to Europe and fight under French command as the 369th Regiment. They may have been given the nickname the Harlem Hellfighters by the Germans that they were fighting. The Harlem Hellfighters became the most decorated U.S. regiment in the war, and they saw more action than any other regiment in the war. The Harlem Hellfighters Band was under the direction of Lieutenant James Reese Europe. Europe had been a well-known concert band leader before the war. He's an important figure in American popular music. In 1912, he became the first African American to lead a band at Carnegie Hall. And that concert helped pave the way for the popular acceptance of jazz. His band, the Clef Club Orchestra, played early blues and ragtime numbers in a style that would now be considered proto-jazz. In France, the Hellfighters Band became widely popular. They entertained French, British, and American troops. They played a syncopated version of La Marseillaise that helped introduce jazz to the European continent and popularized ragtime there as well. They also played songs that the civilian band had made popular, such as the Memphis Blues, which was an early blues written by W.C. Handy. Honey, I've been down in Memphis town, where the people smile, I knew all the while. Hospitality, they were good to me. I couldn't spend a dime, I had the grandest time. I went out dancing in Tennessee. I fell out there and then find the dances way that hop and play. And if we'll forget the tune and hand they called the Memphis Blues. They had a fiddling band. You ought to see him bullet bowl. The man in that tune, listen to the trombones. Well, they moan just like a sinner on revival day, on revival day. Gentry's Europe was originally from Mobile, Alabama, but he was raised in Washington, D.C., and he was probably an early influence on Duke Ellington, who was from Washington, D.C. Notable alumni of James Europe's bands included the composers Noble Sissle and Hughie Blake. Heard of them? Yeah, good. And the tap dancer Bill Robinson, who later became well known as Mr. Bojangles. By the autumn of 1918, the leaders of the opposing armies in World War I knew the war was coming to an end. And they agreed that the fighting would stop on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. But they insisted that their troops continue fighting right up until the 11th hour. So there were men who needlessly died in the final minutes of a war that the leaders on both sides had already agreed was over. The last American soldier to fall in the Great War, and quite probably the last soldier killed in the war, was Private Henry Gunther at 10:59 a.m. Gunther had been a sergeant, but he was demoted after a letter home criticizing the army was intercepted. Reportedly, he wanted to redeem himself in the eyes of his peers, and he charged a German machine gun position. The Germans tried to wave him off, shouting that the war was over, but he continued charging and firing, and he was killed. This song is about the last French soldier to fall in the war, Private Augustine Trebuchet, an accordion player from southern France. It was 11:15 on a cool November morning. Private Trebuchet was carrying a message in his hand for the soldiers who'd been ordered to move on across the meads. Forward till the war is over was the general command. And that cool November morning, when the war was nearly over, word spread that at 11 all hostilities would end. But the soldiers had been ordered to move on across the meads against the enemy positions, and the generals insisted they'd press on with the offensive in the thick of the artillery. village in the south of France, well, people there would dance. And all the foreign armies he'd gone to march by Verdun, and the song, the war kept dragging on and on for a private treasure. First class tradition was carrying a message that right at 11:30 soup would be served to the man. Was the last to cross the river as it had lost its news. For though the war was all but over, the general still ordered that the fighting men move forward in the thick of the artillery. Play songs and his accordion and his village in the south of France, while the people there would dance. But though the trenches he survived, and he almost made it home alive. Bullet struck him and he died 10:45. He sang a private tribution, played songs and his accordion, and his village in the south of France, while the people there would dance. And over foreign armies he'd gone to march by Verdun and the Somme, but no longer would the war drag on for a private tribution. No longer would the war drag on for a private tribution. Before the phonograph became a household item in the early 1900s, the most common medium for music was sheet music. And the center for the sheet music industry was Tin Pan Alley in New York. Tin Pan Alley was a row of publishing houses that had been founded around 1885 by Irish and Jewish immigrants. And these publishing houses had staff songwriters, and they would churn out music to be sold as sheet music to theaters and traveling shows. The songs of Tin Pan Alley formed the bulk of what we now call the American Songbook, and Tin Pan Alley lasted well into the 20th century. In 1931, Tin Pan Alley songwriters Yip Harburg and Jay Gordy co-wrote a song with lyrics inspired by the Great Depression and the hardships being experienced by World War I veterans in the Depression. Brother Can You Spare a Dime became an American standard, with popular versions by Rudy Valley, Al Jolson, Bing Crosby, and others. In 1924, Congress overrode a veto by President Calvin Coolidge and awarded bonus certificates to World War I veterans to compensate them for the income that they had lost while serving in the war. These bonus certificates would be redeemable for cash when they matured in 1945. But with the onset of the Depression in 1929, many veterans started looking to a possible early redemption of those bonus certificates as a source of relief from hardship. In 1932, the veterans organized as the Bonus Expeditionary Force, or the Bonus Army. They marched on Washington. They set up camp in swampland on the outskirts of the city, But in July of that year, the Army under General MacArthur, supported by cavalry under then Major Patton, used tear gas and smoke grenades to disperse the veterans and evict them from the camp. Local law enforcement opened fire, and 2 veterans were killed. The spectacle of the U.S. military attacking its own veterans was so appalling to the American public, it's thought to be one of the reasons Hoover lost the 1932 election. That's an unofficial portrait of Herbert Hoover. I've included an official portrait as well, which is they used to tell me I was really true, and so I followed along. But it was earth to plow, more guns to bear. I was always there, right on the job. They used to tell me I was really true, with peace and glory ahead. Why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread? Once I built a railroad, made it good, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once I built a tower to the sun, brick and rivet and lime. Once I built a tower, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we look swell, full of that Yankee Doodle Dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was the kid with a drum. So don't you remember, they called me Al. It was Al all the time. See, don't you remember, I'm your man. Brother, can you spare a dime? 'Cause in khaki suits, oh gee, we look swell for that Yankee Doodle Dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was a kid with a drum. Oh son, don't you remember, you called me Al, it was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember, I'm your pal. Buddy, can you spare a dime? In 1933, a second bonus army was formed, and it again marched on Washington. Newly elected President Roosevelt was also opposed to the early redemption of bonus certificates, but he learned from Hoover's mistake and allowed the demonstrators to set up camp in Virginia. And eventually, 25,000 were given jobs with the Civilian Conservation Corps, and that helped alleviate some of the hardship. In 1936, Congress finally authorized the early redemption of bonus certificates, overriding Roosevelt's veto. The fiasco of the bonus army incident brought greater attention to the issue of veteran benefits and veterans' rights and the need for compensation of veterans. Excuse me. And one of the organization that had the most influence in that was the American Legion, which was an organization of veterans formed after the First World War. In 1944, Congress passed and Roosevelt signed the GI Bill, which provided benefits for returning World War II veterans, including low-interest loans for houses and businesses, a year's unemployment, and money for tuition for high schools and colleges. And the large number of returning veterans who took advantage of the GI Bill gave rise to the American middle class and brought about the prosperity this country experienced in the 1950s and 60s. But sadly, racism played a part in the distribution of benefits, and the majority of black veterans were denied their rightful benefits. And as a result, the majority of black Americans were excluded from the prosperity of the 1950s and 60s and the American middle class that arose during that time. Popular music tells our stories and marks the events in our lives, and that includes the stories of servicemen here and overseas, and of their families. Some years ago at a show, a woman requested that I play the song Stardust, the old standard by Hoagie Carmichael. The band was playing Stardust as they danced on the floor. When it dance was over, he was off to the next day she was over here. He was over there. It was a last dance to Stardust that they shared. She read the letter that he sent as he marched towards home. She read the letter saying he was never coming home. She prayed that there was some mistake, that somehow he was spared. But it was a last dance to Stardust that they shared. Last dance to Stardust, living in her memory. The last dance to Stardust that haunts her reverie. And the sound of wind and violins will always fill the air. On our last dance to Stardust that they share. Now people come into this world, people pass away, but the music that they make for an eternity will stay. Like a record on the ocean, like a true love once declared. Like the last dance to Stardust that they share. Last dance to Stardust, living in her memory. The last dance to Stardust that haunts her reverie. And the sound of wind and violins will always fill the air. On the last dance to Stardust that they share. And she said to me, this memory I can't let disappear. She asked me, won't you play that song from way back when I long to hear? Now it take me back once more to 1943. And his last dance to Stardust with me. His last dance to Stardust with me. Sometimes I wonder why I spend lonely nights dreaming of a song, the melody haunts my reverie, and I am artist was voted the most popular song of the first half of the 20th century. There have been a lot of popular versions. The most well-known and most popular big band version was by Artie Shaw. But another popular big band version was by Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller had the top-selling big band between 1939 and 1942 with 69 top 10 hits. When World War II broke out, Miller was 38, wore glasses, and married, so he wasn't likely to be drafted. But he volunteered for the military, asking for the opportunity to modernize the Army band to boost troop morale. And his 58-piece Army Air Forces band also included a string section, and like his civilian band, it was commercially successful. In December of 1944, the band was scheduled to entertain the troops in recently liberated Paris, and with official flights delayed by heavy fog, on December 15th, Miller caught a ride with a friend in a small plane, and that plane disappeared over the English Channel in bad weather. Like the James Reese Europe band, Glenn Miller's Army Air Forces band played songs that his civilian band had popularized, and we played with James Reese Europe. We played Memphis Blues, which was a W.C. Handy tune. We're going to do another W.C. Handy tune that Lee's going to take the vocal on, and Dan's going to join us again. And Glenn Miller had a successful recording of this, the St. Louis Blues March.
You can win.
probably caught a sneak preview. The next song is a very popular song among both Allied and Axis forces during World War II. And it was, the lyrics were written by a German soldier, a poet, veteran of the First World War. I believe he wrote them during the First World War. And the song, Lily Marlene, was used as propaganda by both the Germans and the Americans during World War II. The famous American version was, of course, by Marlene Dietrich.
Outside the barracks, by the corner light, I'll always stand and wait for you at night. We will create a world for two. I'll wait for you the whole night through. For you, Lily Marlene. For you, Lily Marlene. Bugler tonight, don't play your call to arms. I want another evening with her charms. Then we will say goodbye and part. I'll always keep you in my heart. With me, Lily Marlene. With me, Lily Marlene. Give me a rose to show how much you care. Tied to the stem, a lap of golden hair. Surely tomorrow you'll feel blue, but then you'll find a love that's new. For you, Lily Marlene. For you, Lily Marlene.
Good day.
When we are marching through the mud and cold, and when my pack is more than I can hold, my love for you renews my mind. I'm warm again, my pack is light. It's you, Lily Marlene. It's you, Lily Marlene.
Let's hear it for Dan Tammy joining us up. Thank you, Dan. Let's hear it for Lee on vocal. American Indians played an important role in both war efforts in both world wars. In World War I, the Choctaw served as code talkers, and the Germans were unable to break the code, their code being unfamiliar with the Choctaw language. In World War II, that strategy was repeated even more famously with the Navajo in the Pacific Theater and with the Comanche in North Africa. The Navajo, and then we have the Comanche. American Indians served in other roles as well. Ira Hayes was a Pima Indian. He was a Marine. He was a war hero and fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima. He was one of the men photographed raising the flag over the Battle of Mount Suribachi after the American victory. After the war, Ira Hayes was uncomfortable with his status as a war hero, and he suffered from alcoholism, possibly brought on by PTSD from his combat experience. And he died an alcohol-related death in 1955. His story is memorialized in a song that was written by Peter Lafarge and made popular by Johnny Cash. There's a story I wouldn't tell about a great Indian sugar Thank you. Both Peter Lafarge, who wrote the Ballad of Ira Hayes, and Johnny Cash, who popularized it, were veterans. Johnny Cash served in the Air Force. He was a specialist in Morse code, and it's thought that he might have been the first person to transmit the message that Stalin had died. Peter Lafarge served in the Korean War. He served on the aircraft carrier Boxer, and he was injured when a plane crashed into the ship. Korea was known as the land of the morning calm, but it wasn't calm in the years after World War II. In 1950, the North invaded the South. The South Korean army, in an attempt to slow the northern advance, bombed its own bridge over the River Han in Seoul, indifferent to the lives of the hundreds of refugees who were crossing the bridge at the time. For its part, the North Korean army used forced conscripts from captured South Korean villages, indifferent to the lives of those villagers and their families. Soon the US, the UN, and China were involved. Most of the American soldiers were draftees. This song features a beautiful guitar part that we wrote. It's called Strange Land Far Away. They were taken from their children, they were taken from their wives in a strange land far away. They were taken from their houses in the shadow of the sun, and they were begged to storm the valleys and the hills before Busan, and the fire rained upon them, and like ashes in a typhoon, they were gone. There were letters from a file, there were numbers on a form, in a strange land far away. They were sent into the winter when the calm became a storm, in a strange land far away. They were made to face the armor at Osan and Chona, and they were caught up in the deluge at Chosin and Chongchong, and the fire rained upon them, and like ashes in a typhoon, they were gone. They were washed away with the bridge as they crossed the river on. They were stood before the ditches at Taechan. Fire poured upon them in the harbor of Incheon, and like ashes in a typhoon, they were gone. Ghostly figures in the darkness, vague forms that had no name, in a strange land far away. They ran through showers of napalm, and they vanished in the flames, in a strange land far away. They were sent over the ridges at Chirwon and Markinson, and their comrades died in droves, but they kept driving on, and the fire rained upon them, and like ashes in a typhoon, they were gone. Thank you. Veterans returning from the Korean War weren't given the same hero's welcome that had awaited those returning home from World War II. And the same was true, and even more so, for veterans returning home from Vietnam. The war was unpopular, people unfairly took it out on the soldiers who were often neglected and badly treated. Vietnam has become a popular subject of TV shows, documentaries, movies, books, and songs. But there are stories that are less often told. There were 8 American servicewomen who lost their lives in Vietnam. All of them were nurses. Women were not subjected to the draft, so all the women who went to serve as nurses or in any other capacity did so voluntarily. Of the 8 servicewomen who lost their lives in Vietnam, all but one were in aircraft accidents. One, Sharon Lane, was a victim of enemy fire. This song is called Sharon Lane. Talk about Rolling Thunder. You can talk about LBJ. You can talk about Richard Nixon. You can talk about JFK. You can talk about William Kelly. You can talk about Hanoi Jane. But what do you say when you talk about Sharon Lane? You can talk about the French that did me the fool. Talk about Ho Chi Minh. You can talk about Eisenhower. You can talk about Ding Ding. You can talk about the Gulf of Tonkin. You can talk about La Train. But what do you say when you talk about Sharon Lane? Sharon Lane crossed the ocean in a plane. She spread her wings and landed in Darnay. You wouldn't know her name from her stature or her fame. She had one life to live, and she had one life to live. You can't talk about John Rambo, you can have it on the screen. You can talk about Marlon Brando, you can talk about Martin Sheen. You can talk about Matthew Booth, trying to talk like John Wayne. But what do you say when you talk about Sharon Lane? Sharon Lane crossed the ocean in a plane. She spread her wings and landed in Darnay. You wouldn't know her name from her stature or her fame. She had one life to live, and she had one life to give. You can sing a song by Barry Sadler. You can sing a song by Tom T. Hall. Talk about the smell of napalm, like Robert Duvall. You can talk about a Buddhist monk who set himself aflame. You can talk about a wall with 58,000 names. Some wanted to see more, some wanted something more. Some looked up to their fathers who fought in the World War. Some wanted to pay for school, others had a debt to pay. Some didn't want to go, they got sent there anyway. Sharon Lane crossed the ocean in a plane. She spread her wings and landed in Darnay. You wouldn't know her name from her stature or her fame. She had one life to give, and she had one life to live. We're gonna leave you with one last song. This is not about popular music, and it's not about veterans, it's about hope. It's called Blues Before the Dawn. I hope you've enjoyed the program. Thank you again for coming out. If you're a veteran, thank you for your service. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. Thank you again to Jonathan Bourne Library for hosting the show. be no breeze. There will be no song. There will be no horse wage. There will be no blind rage. There will be no old age. No fear of tomorrow. There will be no senselessness. There will be no arrogance. There will be no prejudice. There will be no scorn. Someday, when I wake up from this dream, in which I was born, oh, there will be good times, and there will be sweet wine. There will be smiles that never fade. Oh, there will be stars bright, and there will be moonlight. There will be sunshine, yeah, and there will be shade. There will be sunrise in every sunrise, watching the night skies turn on into the morning. Someday, when I wake up from this dream in which I was born. There will be no here and gone. There will be no passing on. There will be no right and wrong. Just children. There will be memories. There will be sights unseen. Imagine that life will bring day after day after day after day. But there will be no highs and lows, just clouds and rainbows. And we'll laugh